back to WCB Jazz Vinyl and Happy New Year. So I didn't know where to start with my first video of the year, but figured, hey, I just got in that copy of Walter Davis Jr.'s Davis Cup exclusive Tone Poet edition. So I figured, why not start with that? After all, this has been a topic of some controversy, and actually in the secondary market already. This can be found on Discogs for $175, and in fact, the edition that has the number 75 on the back of it is going for $500. Now, don't worry, none have sold for that amount, but that's what they're going for. Not to add fuel to that fire. So before we dive in, as always, and because I'm close to 8,000 subscribers, just maybe a dozen or so away, go ahead and please hit subscribe. Plenty of great content coming in 2025, and otherwise, of course, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at what_can_brown. All right, so let's give you a little bit closer look at what this is. How does it differ from, say, a standard tone poet, right? So anyway, here is the cover. Very well, sort of, very well done recreation of the original. And I'll show you my original in just a second. You can see here on the back you have the liner notes. This does indeed have a gatefold. I think some people were wondering early on, at least, whether these sort of exclusive editions were going to have the gatefold, and it does with a number of pictures. It also has double pockets. So you might wonder, why does it have double pockets? Isn't this a single disc? Well, it is a single disc, but what they decided to do, I think for the first time for a tone poet, but now I have to question myself. I'd have to go back and check the Rollins and the Coltrane titles. I'm trying to remember, but this includes a lithographic print or lithograph print by Francis Wolff. And so the one that they wanted to include, and I don't really want to touch this with my fingers, so I'm just going to kind of show you, maybe part of it here. I'll see if I can open it just a little bit. There we go. So yeah, very nice, print of Walter Davis, presumably from this session, because, well, this is the only session with him, well, at least as a leader for Blue Note, because he was on some other sessions for, let's see, supporting like Jackie McLean and Donald Byrd and others. But in any event, what they did is they included that print in one of the pockets, and they included the disc in the other pocket. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So a couple of other things to note that are specific to this exclusive edition, and hopefully everybody sort of remembers what I'm talking about when I say exclusive. So this was if you signed up for the Tone Poet Society, where you get every title, at least for a certain period of time, whether quarterly for the semi-annual or the annual, you would have the ability to then purchase one exclusive title per quarter that otherwise is not going to be available to people who don't subscribe. So I did the quarterly subscription, and those editions were shipped in late December. It was like December 20th. They arrived right before the holidays, actually, so they got here very quick. I was just out of town, so I haven't had time to listen to them and certainly not make a video. But the other titles actually that were included in that first shipment for January, not just the exclusive title for Q1, but also these two titles that you see here behind me, right? So Grassroots and then Freedom Sound by the Jazz Crusaders. So maybe I'll talk about those in an upcoming video. But in any event, what else is different about this Tone Poet edition? A couple of things. So firstly, on the back, it is numbered, and you'll see here a foil stamp. So you'll see here Tone Poet Society, and then you'll see the number, the number of this edition, which is what does that say? It's too shiny, 281 out of 1,000. So yeah, that's my copy. So it's out there in public. If you ever see this one for sale on Discogs for $500, you know that it's me trying to flip it. But I'm not going to do that. So yeah, so that's something that's unique about what they're doing with these exclusive titles, in addition to that print. And then the other thing that they're doing just for these exclusive titles, not for these others, regardless of whether you're a member or not, is this hype sticker. And sorry, there may be some glare here, but they included this sort of custom, if you will, Tone Poet Society hype sticker, which again you don't see on these other titles, but I guess you will see on the exclusive title for each quarter. And so that's kind of fun. It's the same information. It's just kind of fun to have a slightly different hype sticker on it, I suppose, as well. So otherwise, what to expect with this is what you should expect from any Tone Poet. Mastered by Kevin Gray, pressed at RTI, produced by Joe Harley. Obviously, a top quality product, and yeah, a great choice of a title too, for reasons we're about to get into. All right, so about this title, Walter Davis Jr. He only released one album for Blue Note as a leader, and this was it. It was his first album as a leader, and he actually wouldn't have another as a leader until 1978. And that was a Japanese release on the Denon label. Basically, Denon had put out, like, I think they called it their, forget what it was called. It was like their New York series, where they highlighted a number of U.S. artists, and they may have even recorded them here in the U.S., but they released them in Japan on the Denon label. Those are actually very inexpensive. It's just typically you have to pay for the shipping from Japan in order to get them. So look that one up though. Look up his Denon title that he put out in 1978. But up until this point, up until the point of Davis Cup, as well as after, he was typically a sideman. So he got his start, at least on recordings, playing with Max Roach on some early shellac disc sort of era stuff. He was also playing on Max Roach's albums that were put out on Debut Records, which was sort of that Mingus label that he came up with in like the early 50s. Let's see, Davis played with Dizzy Gillespie. He was on Donald Byrd's Byrd in Paris, as well as Parisian Thoroughfare, which are those two like rare Brunswick records that are definitely worthwhile, worth checking out. His first recording for Blue Note, I believe, was on Jackie McLean's New Soil, which was put out the same year actually as Davis Cup. And then he played on Donald Byrd's Bird in Hand, which I think also was 1959. And then he played on Art Taylor's Tenors, and that was for, is that Prestige or New Jazz? I think it was New Jazz. And that was also in 1959. So I think it's fitting that that on this album, on Davis Cup, we have Donald Byrd, we have Jackie McLean, and we have Art Taylor. Each of those guys supporting Davis, Davis on this album, and then we also have Sam Jones on bass. So as far as the music goes, I want to say first of all, this is in stereo. And this was not originally put out in stereo, even though I do believe it was, well, it certainly was indeed recorded in stereo originally. So this is the first mono edition, or the original pressing that was a mono edition, may have actually been a sort of a fold down stereo recording into mono, right? That could be how this was put out, because Blue Note was doing a lot of that for their mono editions. Even pretty early on, they were recording in stereo and folding it down to mono. This may still have had both a mono and a stereo. The nerds out there who have more sort of intimate knowledge of Blue Note will know, and they'll be able to say, no, actually, he only was recording in stereo only as of this date, and I just don't have that top of mind. But let's see, the first time that this album was put out in stereo was in Japan in 1989. The Analog Productions sort of audiophile release, they did choose stereo for that, for their 2010 edition. And obviously now we have it here in stereo for Tone Poet. And even though I think that there's probably a lot of, I'll call them purists, that want mono just because this was in mono, even if it was originally recorded in stereo, I think actually that there's a lot to love about the fact that this is in stereo. I think it works really, really well, and the reason why I think that it works well is because we have two horns. Byrd is in left, and you have McLean in right. Walter Davis is in center, which makes him really feel like the leader. I think he's like sort of that central presence, and then we have the two horns on either side. And why I think that sort of lends itself towards my statement of saying it works really well is because there's no issues really with it feeling like there's a panned sound. Because I think for some of the extended Davis solos with him in center, it almost sounds like it's a trio recording where you have bass drums and then you have this sort of center voice of Davis. And for the more ensemble tracks, where there's more of a presence of the other horns, because I think each of these I think they're quintet format on each, but having one horn in each of the channels makes it feel, I think, just very nicely balanced, especially for some of those opening melodies. So if I'm going to point you towards maybe some highlights, let me see. I mean, first of all of the pieces here are Walter Davis Jr. originals, and they are just beautiful. So I would say a favorite of the entire album is a ballad, actually, which is titled Sweetness. And ballads aren't often my favorite on a record, but this one is just really, really gorgeous. It's one of those that I think, like I said earlier, has like a trio feel in places, but just accented really, really well by the two horns. Elsewhere, I think this album is much more sort of straight ahead hard bop. I don't get the sense, though, here that either Byrd or McLean are trying to sort of outblow each other per se. Um, I think instead that they're both respectful of the fact that Walter Davis is is the leader and the spotlight needs to be on him, and it could make this album feel a little bit more restrained, at least from the horn standpoint. But I don't mean to say that that they don't sound phenomenal, or that they don't play inspired solos. It's just they aren't playing maybe as high, as fast, as crazy as they might if it was, say, like their album that they were putting out. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why I like this album even more, because it does have a little bit of that more restraint, and I feel like the spotlight is on Davis and him as a sort of composer and artist. And so to that point, I think Davis just sounds really comfortable and in control on this album. It's very cleanly played and just a really well presented album. And I think that's one of the reasons why it just ends up being a really great choice for the Tone Poet series. So maybe a quick word about how this compares with the original mono, but this is at the expense of just repeating myself because I've been talking about Tone Poet editions for several years now here on YouTube, and oftentimes my comments get around some of the same points, especially for some of these titles where they were previously released, at the time period, in the Blue Note catalog at the time that they were recorded. And all of those points I think are relevant here. First of all, it's difficult to find a mono pressing of this in decent shape, right? So mine is probably VG to VG plus, has a lot of what we call character to it, and the Tone Poet edition obviously offers a much cleaner way to listen to the music. There's much more sort of sonic detail, right? There's better dynamics. There's all these things that I've talked about in some of my previous videos about Tone Poet editions. All of those comments are relevant here. I think that the mono format is not necessarily something that you should like require of this album. I don't think that it's that there's something specifically magical about hearing it in mono, and in fact, I think I enjoy hearing it in stereo. I think it sounds more of a natural recording. And I know that there's purists out there that just want to hear it in mono, either because it was originally in mono or simply because they have it in their head that mono does offer some type of magic, which again is an odd statement in those situations when it was recorded in stereo and they fold it down, or fold it down to into mono. Um, but I don't really subscribe to that. I think this sounds great in stereo. It certainly sounds better than the original, because it's cleaner, because there's no noise. It's I think just everything about it. It sounds more lively. It sounds more natural. All of those things again that I've addressed in prior videos. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. I think that what I was waiting for with this first shipment and with this first exclusive title is to have a little bit more certainty around whether I was going to re-up my subscription once the quarter is out, right? So I've already paid for my first quarter's subscription. So I have the January titles, the February titles, the March titles, plus this exclusive edition. And I think after hearing this, um, and it's here's the thing, it's because it's this title. Like that's the reason why I subscribed to Q1. It wasn't it wasn't necessarily for the rest. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still buying. So I'm still going to want to own some of these other titles that are in the series. But did I need all of them? I don't know that I needed all of them, and that's why I only bought Q1. But I bought Q1 because I wanted Davis Cup, and so whether I decide to get the next quarter may indeed be based on that exclusive title, because I don't want to pay aftermarket prices, if it ends up being something that I do want. If it's not something that I want, then I'll probably just continue to buy the original, or excuse me, the individual titles for the next quarter, and then reassess for the third quarter, etc. I just didn't want to be shut out of something that I wanted, and in this case, I certainly wasn't disappointed. So I am looking forward to the rest of the Tone Poet series. I am looking forward to spinning these for the first time because these are still sealed. I haven't spun them yet. I only just got back in town the other day. Um, so, a lot to look forward to, and I understand the frustration out there from those folks who do feel like they were shut out from getting this one because they didn't want to lock themselves in for, even a quarter. And it sounds like based on the secondary market, it's just going to be difficult to get some of these exclusive titles. But let's be real, like wait for things to cool off. There's 1,000 of them out there. And even on record store day, 1,000 of a title is not that limited, and just give it like a few months and prices come down. So it's still very possible that these are going to be able to be, purchased. Obviously, it's going to have to be in the secondary market. But I just encourage people to be patient if it is something that they wanted and they feel like they missed out. So that's what I'll say about that. I know in my last video as well, I kind of referenced that this was a little bit of a problem for the folks internationally who were not able to participate in the Tone Poet Society. And even though I haven't heard an update on that in terms of like concrete information, Joe Harley did comment somewhere. I think I don't know if he necessarily put this first in my video or if he said it to someone else in some other video, I forget. But it sounds like they are working on a solution for international buyers. I don't know if that is inclusive of these exclusive titles. I'm not sure. But it sounds like that they are trying to work through a solution for international buyers. So I'll cross my fingers for you on your behalf that a solution is come up with, so that everybody can have access to the titles that they want. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone for sticking with me on this first video of 2025, and look forward to hopefully a lot of great content throughout the year. So thanks everyone.